Cyrus, you are a member of the Intergroup in the European Parliament. I would like to talk to you about the Poland and Hungary issues we have at the moment. Can you try to explain the situation as it is right now?
Yes, so basically what's happening in Poland and Hungary at the moment is not only exclusive to Poland and Hungary, and I think that what we're seeing in these days, in these years, is a backlash when it comes to LGBTIQ rights in a number of countries. There's a sort of backtracking, and I think that this should be addressed immediately whenever this thing happens in any member state. So in Poland we have seen a number of municipalities that have enacted laws banning people from being themselves, so they call them LGBT-free zones, where in those cities, in those villages, in those towns, you cannot be who you are if you are LGBT. If you are an LGBT person. Then in Hungary we have seen a lot of other issues, one of which is the latest law that was introduced by the Prime Minister of Hungary, Viktor Orban, that does not allow what he calls propaganda for LGBT people. But what it actually means is that when it comes to children, when it comes to schools, when it comes to universities, to students, they cannot know about diversity, and they cannot be told about what diversity is. They cannot be told that it is okay if you feel different to others. It is just putting under the carpet the realities in the community. And I think that is dangerous because it sets a precedent, first of all, in the sense that it tells people that it is not okay to be LGBTIQ. But apart from that, it also tries to push back those people that were themselves, and they have to go back into hiding again, go back into the closet, and that is very dangerous. So as a European Parliament, we worked on a number of resolutions. I was the Socialists negotiator for the Poland resolution, where we declared the European Union. It was a historic resolution because we declared the European Union an LGBTIQ freedom zone, where everyone is free to be whoever they are within all of the EU. And I was very happy to see a move forward in Poland where a number of municipalities following that resolutions reversed their original law. So that was a good thing, and we had some success. Then on the other hand, when it comes to Hungary, we had a resolution in which we condemned what was happening. And I was very happy to see that the resolution got the approval of 69% of the whole European Parliament, which meant that all across the political spectrum, we were all agreeing within the European Parliament that what was happening in Hungary was something that could not be allowed to happen, and that we wanted to see change. We're helping on the ground the society movements in Hungary, and we hope that with our support and them on the ground, we can convince Hungarians to vote in the referendum in which the Prime Minister recently said that they will have on this particular law, but also in elections which will come after that. So we hope that the movement for equality in Hungary will be moving forward and will have our support undoubtedly.
So what is it that the European Parliament do to help these communities?
Yes, first of all, visibility. Many a times these small communities, small organizations do not have any visibility at all within their countries. For instance, in Hungary and in Poland, media has been captured and is in total control of the governing party. And that is unacceptable because people in their homes are only listening to one version of events, which is unacceptable at the end of the day. We need a plural society where different views are heard, and then people can decide for themselves. So we are giving them that visibility, but apart from that, we are also giving them resources, which are important as well.
So I've seen a politician from the European Parliament talking about the sanctions is a good idea, and some have talked about maybe exclusion of these countries. What do you think about that?
I do not want to see exclusion of the people living in those countries, because those are people who voted in their referenda to join the European Union. They hold close to the values of the European Union, and it is for that reason that they wanted to join the European Union, because they saw a European Union of values, of equality, a European Union of solidarity, and that is what they dreamt of. And unfortunately, that dream is being tarnished by their own governments. So I do not agree that they should leave the European Union, but Obviously, yes, as a European Union, we must sanction those governments, not the people, the governments that enact such legislations that at the end of the day hit hard on human rights. Everyone is born equal and everyone should be treated equally all throughout their lives, and that is our simple mission, and that is what we want to see in all of the European Union.
Mm-hmm. Maybe a tricky question, like the sanctions that you do against Poland and Hungary as it is right now, when do you think that will have like a major effect on them?
We have already seen an effect, for instance, on Poland. It wasn't sanctions, it was at that time only the resolution that I spoke about, and we saw a number of municipalities reversing the laws that they had enacted. So that was something good, and we saw some results. With regards to Hungary, I mean, even if you see polls in Hungary at the moment, Hungarians do not agree with their current prime minister on this specific law. They agree, for instance, with a huge majority with having LGBTIQ rainbow families recognized in Hungary, and having the gay couples, same-sex couples, being able to adopt children. Obviously, that is in the interest of the child being adopted at the end of the day. So we're seeing that Hungarians are in line with what the European Parliament is saying. At the end of the day, as members of the European Parliament, we represent citizens, and we are representing Hungarian citizens in the European Parliament in what we're doing, and we are going to keep on being their voice, because at the end of the day, that is what we are elected for, and that is what we'll keep on doing.
Well, if you look at like the hate crime map of Europe, of course we have incidents in Poland and Hungary, which are the big players on this. But how do you see like the hate crimes overall in Europe? Are we doing good, or is there some places that are not doing so good?
This morning I listened to an intervention during the conference made by the Belgian Deputy Prime Minister, Petra de Sutter. And she said something that I really agree with, because I say it most of the times as well. A few years ago, I used to tell everyone that in the near future we will all have so many rights that probably we wouldn't need to keep on fighting for rights, because we would have equality. However, we're seeing the backsliding of rights, as I have said. And when you have one politician in one country speaking against a minority, then you start seeing this mushrooming in other places. For instance, what we saw in Hungary, and the words of Prime Minister Viktor Orban ended up being the same words repeated in Georgia, for instance, a few weeks ago, where we saw a government that was not allowing a pride march to happen in the Georgian capital, Tbilisi. And that meant that the inalienable rights of that minority to even assemble were being totally shut down. And we see this mushrooming. So yes, unfortunately, when these things happen in one country, they start happening in other countries, and the discourse of politician ends up helping such crimes, violence against the LGBTIQ community. We have seen a lot of violence in Hungary recently, not only in Budapest, the capital city, but also in different other towns, villages and cities. And unfortunately, this does mushroom in other places, and it spreads so fast. I always say that hate is contagious, and we need to fight that hate, because it is as contagious as COVID, if not more in reality, and we're seeing it spreading all around. And we must fight it with love, understanding and respect, which I too believe is contagious at the end of the day.
Yeah, so the strategy that you guys have made in the European Parliament, the 2020 to 25, is that gonna help inform and help this not spreading as much into Central Europe?
So Commissioner Helena Dalli from the European Commission came out with the strategy over these 5 years, and yes, it addresses one of these issues. Two issues actually that you mentioned. So it addresses the recognition, mutual recognition of rainbow families all across the European Union, as my friend Mark mentioned earlier on. But apart from that, it also directs its aim on hate crimes as well. So yes, it will have an impact. Now what we hope is to see the Council of Ministers of the European Union having the same enthusiasm as we have in the European Parliament, because at the end of the day we are two houses, two chambers. It is not enough to have the European Parliament on board, we also need the Council on board, and hopefully we will have that.
So when do you think that all these new laws will be implemented
It will take time because the actual laws will start coming out bit by bit at the end of the year. So the proposals from the Commission are not out yet. The strategy is out. Once the proposals are out, then we'll start discussing them in the European Parliament. They'll discuss them also in the Council, and then we'll have to find an agreement between ourselves. And then they will be enacted in national laws. So it will take some time, but the strategy is for 5 years. And in the European Parliament, we'll be working hard in order to have this done in the shortest possible time.
Wojciech, when you look at the laws in Poland right now, what consequences do they have for you as an ordinary LGBTQ person in Poland?
But there are no legal consequences at the moment. I mean, the laws, especially when you think about the LGBT-free communities, doesn't really impose any actions. The LGBT communities more or less mean that the local government is saying we want to protect the traditional family values we have in Poland, and we want to stop the LGBT ideology, and that's really it. I mean, there is no actions put behind it. So I would say that the current situation doesn't really hurt us as much. It's more of a media talk at the moment, and no actions are being actually imposed.
So, let's say if I went to Poland as an LGBTQ person, and I was open about it, I wouldn't feel any negatives unless I went into one of these zones, or what?
Oh, that's a different story. I mean, well, when it comes to LGBT people in general in Poland, it pretty much depends where you are and where you live. There is, I would say, you can feel the difference between the west and the eastern part of the country, as well as the small cities and the big cities. I don't think it's that shocking anymore, or people are maybe more friendly in the big cities, maybe because they are, I don't know, better educated, they just have broadened horizons, maybe because they even have friends from, I don't know, university, workplaces that are LGBT people. But if you think of those small places and people are being just afraid of everything that's new, they don't really understand what is the reason behind it. They've never got like any explanation, and especially when you think about the eastern part of Poland, because this is the part where most of the LGBT zones actually are. Those places are really Catholic, and the Catholic Church doesn't really help us. So
what you say is that is partly religion based?
Yep.
And maybe not so much like a political statement.
It is still a political statement, nevertheless. I mean, our president is in his campaign running for the office 2 years ago. He said it out loud in public that LGBT people are not people, we're just an ideology. So there is, I would say, an open hate towards LGBT people coming from the politicians, especially from our running government, which mainly consists or has the greatest part is the Law and Justice Party, with everyone else just trying to give support. But the problem is that the Law and Justice Party has actually most of the votes, so they can outvote anything. So of course you can come to Poland, you can live in Poland, but then you still need to be a little bit, let's say, self-aware of what's appropriate and what's inappropriate. I mean, you can try to go by hand with your boyfriend or girlfriend, whatever, but you just need to be aware. In some small cities you might get called names. If you go to like very, very eastern part of the countries, you might even get chased. So
okay, so if we take a look into the future, do you think that Poland will be better on the LGBTQ rights in, let's say, 5 or 10 years?
I want to say that I do believe in that, or at least I very, very hope so. The biggest problem is that I don't really know what the election is going to bring us, because currently our government is being imposed with EU sanctions regarding not respecting the basic human rights, not respecting the LGBTQ communities, but they don't really do anything. They don't really care about it. They say, well, this is a EU rule, we don't have to rule, we don't really have to follow it. So as our government right now is actually giving well, literally giving money to people who own kids. You will get 1,000 crowns for each kid you have. And this is mostly people with kids living in the eastern part of Poland voting for the government. So unless we change the government, there will be no change in the LGBT, well, in the prescription of LGBT people. And I'm a little bit afraid that at some point, the more sanctions EU would impose to Poland, actually our government will say, okay, if we cannot get the money from EU, we don't want to be a part of the EU. And they would just start the Polexit. And then we can right now, I don't even want to imagine that, because this for me would most probably mean moving out of the country. But we can take a look at what's happening in Belarus right now. The government wants to do whatever they want to, and there's like literally no one above them. So if Poland becomes, or even Hungary, becomes a non-EU country, I think the situation would just get even worse. The whole thing would literally fall apart, and we would get back to totalitarianism. So.
So yeah, we all hope that Poland will stay in the EU and the sanction will work. And
that's the idea basically behind it. But we're like kind of preparing ourselves for worst case scenario. You know, we're thinking, okay, if we were to move out, where would it go? Like, would it be Czech Republic, Germany, maybe Holland? And we're thinking about those consequences. Is maybe not here and now, but this might be in the 5-10 years actually happening. And even though, I mean, we don't really want to do that. We have families, we have friends and so on, and we're so close by them. But then on the other question is, like, for how long can you actually stay in the country that doesn't want you there? I mean, we're not getting any personal attacks at the moment. And the question is, will it happen or not? Is it just the government not really accepting us and saying, yeah, LGBT people don't have any rights, but they don't really impose any actions on us? Because this is what we've been living for nearly 10 years right now. I mean, me and my partner. So as long as this is this, then we would probably stay.
So do you have a vision of what is needed to move from where you are now to a better place in Poland when it comes to the rights?
Yeah, I would say what is needed is a very basic thing, which is accepting the LGBT community as a whole. And I'm not saying that LGBT people right now should be allowed to get married in church, because it's a very sensitive topic in Poland. I wouldn't say they should be allowed to adopt kids at the moment, because this is also extremely sensitive topic, and it has to be, you know, worked out in a very delicate manner. But what I would simply say is just to stop all the public hate that is going on, especially from the government. And on top of that, respect the EU rules, which is saying at the moment that if you get a registered partnership in one of the EU citizen countries, then this is valid in Poland. And Polish office administration tries to do whatever they can, just not to follow the rules. A recent example is 2 women which are married. They had a baby girl in Ireland, and they moved back to Poland. And you need to translate the birth certificate. And what did happen? Well, the lady told them that in the birth certificate in Polish version, there is always a place for the name of the dad and the name of the mum. But as they were 2, then they had to choose which one is going to be the mum, because the other one is not written in. So, and then say, well, this is what we have, this is how the Polish law works. So I think that what I would really, really hope for is to have a EU standardized law for LGBT people, and procedure to be actually followed.
Ulla, you are formally part of the EU Parliament, and you came here to a debate in Ringkøbing today. I just want to talk to you about the human rights issues in Poland and Hungary. When you look at it from a political standpoint here in Denmark, what do you think about it?
I'm absolutely anxious about the recent developments in both Poland and Hungary. It's absolutely gone in the wrong direction as we see it from my party's side, and we're trying to really focus as strong as we can on the things that we think are going in the wrong direction in both countries.
In the debate, you guys talked a little bit about how the Polish and Hungary people is on the restrictions from political side. How do you see it from a EU perspective, like the sanctions are rolling in right now? Do you think that they will have any effect?
I absolutely believe that respect of fundamental human rights is one of the core issues of the European cooperation, and therefore I'm very happy with this new mechanism that has been adopted in relation to the new budget, and hopefully this is going to work better than what we had previously, where we could not either introduce sanctions or anything against countries not really respecting fundamental human rights and values that the EU is building upon. Whether sanctions is the right way to do it, I'm questioning. I think we need both sanctions, but we first and foremost need dialogue. It's very important that we have a strong political dialogue at the highest level, and it's very important that it's said directly to the leaders of the countries that are not respecting the fundamental rights and values of the EU, that this is not acceptable.
Well, when you come in with laws like these in Poland and Hungary, do you think that being part of the EU is actually still a possibility, or do you think that these countries should be excluded?
I think it's a fair question to put forward whether it's acceptable that countries are apparently violating the values that are so fundamental for the EU cooperation, for the EU as such. So I really think it's valuable to question this, but whether this should actually end up with an exclusion of the EU, I also really doubt that this is the right way forward. I personally strongly believe that you can put forward questions and have a better dialogue, and also hopefully changing things in a better way if you are part of a cooperation. Whereas if you stand outside the door, you can scream and the door can just be shut in your face, and nobody is forced to listening to what you're saying. So arguments and dialogue is the way forward, but combined with probably also sanctions like economic sanctions that the EU has the possibility of.